Hello, everybody. I am Drew Duncan. Do not forget that Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube and Patreon. Look for Drew Duncan Radio. And do not forget that I am wherever you're listening to podcasts. Simply tell your device to play Drew Duncan on Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Deezer, CastBox. I am wherever you are listening to podcasts. Conor McGregor and Donald Cerrone are set to take stage in what is the fight, right? It's the fight right now. It's the fight right now that ESPN is using to not only really promote the brand of the UFC and MMA on their app to get pay-per-view buys, but to take the opportunity to increase pay-per-view buys. That's how big it is. You want to talk about perfect timing. Hey, we've had it for this much, for this long, and guess what? We're going to raise that price. Oh, by the way, the first fight we're doing that with is Conor McGregor, because we know you're going to tune in. And they know you're going to tune in because you either want to see McGregor get his ass whipped or have McGregor hand Donald Cerrone's ass to him. That's exactly what this amounts to. Those are the two reasons you're going to watch this fight. It's really not even about whether or not you're a Cerrone fan, because he's not short of fans, especially right now. One of the things that I talked about, and I touched on it very briefly, was the idea that when Donald Cerrone took this fight, he knew that it was going to give him a huge payday. And what did he do, man? He showed up looking like The Undertaker. But, he was just kind of being himself. This is one of the things that I talked about until it moved over to ESPN. A lot of these fighters were unknown. Look, I've had the very good fortune of interviewing people like Amanda Nunes, Cub Swanson, Matt Brown, Felice Herrig, Kat Zingano, Hoist Gracie, Big John McCarthy. I could go on and on and on, right? David Rickles from my hometown in Wichita. I've had some really great experiences in terms of the opportunities I've had in MMA. And I even had an interview opportunity one time with Donald Cerrone, and I wish like hell now that I would have taken it. And even then I was still 50-50 on whether or not I should have. But the point is simply this. I've been covering MMA for quite a while now, right? For hardcore for about the last 3 or 4 years. And so I know, and I knew about a lot of these fighters, but they were still very unknown. And a big part of that had to do with, I think, how Paramount handled it, even though I thought Bellator for a while was really creeping up. Right around 2017, I thought they were the premier fight promotion in the United States. I really did. But even then, how many fighters did they have that were really known? Bellator kind of got the rap of it's a retirement village for old UFC fighters now. That's not necessarily the case, but that's how it's been viewed for a while. And the point that I'm making is this. Fox really didn't do their due diligence when they had the UFC, and that was the big gripe. And according to what ESPN has said, the numbers are increased. Dana White put out a thing not too long ago saying that 2019 was their biggest year to date. And it's because ESPN knows how to promote. They understand what goes into promoting sports. That's what they do. That is literally what they do. They promote sports while simultaneously promoting their brand. And they could not have picked a better way, I don't think, to promote the ESPN Plus and their pay-per-views than with MMA, specifically the UFC. And I'll tell you what, this McGregor deal could blow it out of the water. The buy rate numbers that are anticipated are beyond phenomenal. And, for Conor McGregor in this fight itself, look, for him, this is do or die. This is, are you going to be a gatekeeper? Are you going to be that guy that people fight, that if they beat you, then they're well on their way to superstardom? Or are you going to get back to where you were? Are you going to be back in that place where you're running things now? You're in complete control of what's happening with your career. You're back to managing everything. It's my way or the highway. Remember, there was a point in time when McGregor wanted a slice of the UFC pie. He wanted stock. Remember, there was a time when McGregor, instead of defending 2 belts, Dana White caved in and said, fine, I'm the guy to talk to. I'm going to put this fight together. Floyd, you need to call me. You need to talk to me. I'm the guy, not my people, not the UFC, not anybody else, not even McGregor himself. I'm the guy. I'm going to promote this. I'm going to put it together. Dana White caved. Do you think he's going to cave right now? No, hell no. Absolutely not. Wouldn't happen. For Donald Cerrone, I think that this is symptomatic of his career maybe coming to a wind down, getting that big payday regardless, and a win obviously puts him in another place in popularity, and a win may even do something for him title-wise. But I think for Cerrone, this is the opportunity to be forever known as the guy who potentially just completely decimated the end for Conor McGregor. A lot of people were watching, him and Cerrone, and, that press conference just wasn't McGregor-esque, and everybody just waiting on McGregor to say some crazy stuff, and it never came out. And I think the craziest thing that McGregor said was, I had to stop drinking Proper 12. I promised everybody I would. Man, let me tell you what, bro. Don't go at him too hard. I mean, those guys were hanging out like they were best buddies, man. Yeah, I think that both guys understand what this fight truly means for them and for the other person, and I think that drives them. I will say I am bothered that there was any, and I don't get it. I don't even know where the hell it came from. All of a sudden, Donald Cerrone's talking about being paid to take a dive, and the thing about it is I asked Cub Swanson about those kinds of things. I think it was the second time that I interviewed him. And he flat told me, he goes, when there's money involved, people can be swayed. But he said he didn't want to believe that any one fighter could be paid to take a dive. That's what he told me. I don't think Cerrone would lay down. There's no reason for him to lay down. There's no reason for anybody to lay down, because I'm going to tell you something. Your pride and your ego and your competitive nature, I think, would just completely take over once you step inside that cage. The octagon is a place where every fighter that I've interviewed ever has told me it is you and that other person. It's not a team sport. They have literally all at some point made it a point to tell me that in an interview, in a conversation, a text message, whatever the case may be. They have, every single one of them has made sure that I am fully aware that it is simply on them as to whether or not they win or lose a fight. And that's a big deal, guys. It's actually a tremendous deal. And the fact of the matter is for Donald Cerrone, I don't know if we're going to call this a last ride, but it certainly feels that we're getting to that point, right? 10 years in the UFC, more UFC knockouts than anybody else. I mean, Conor McGregor, Donald Cerrone, this is a damn good fight. This is a hell of a main event. And then it's going to be followed up by other really great main events, right? They just announced Jorge Masvidal, and then, of course, we're all waiting for Khabib and Ferguson. I mean, there's a lot of opportunities out there. And, one of the things that McGregor talked about for opportunities for himself was, I could pretty much fight who I want to. I mean, it's still out there. People are still saying his name. Tyron Woodley's got to, I'm telling you, this is big right now. This is going to put the UFC in a very good place, and I don't think that there's a better way to start this year than in Vegas. McGregor, Cerrone, 2 headline guys in the UFC. It's just a phenomenal start, and I hope that we all get our money's worth. Guys, I am Drew Duncan, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram is all at Drew Duncan Radio. Additionally, you can find me on YouTube and Patreon. Simply look for Drew Duncan Radio. And do not forget that I am wherever you're listening to podcasts. Simply tell your device to play Drew Duncan on Spreaker, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, Deezer, CastBox, wherever you're listening to podcasts. I am there. And as always, don't you dare touch that dial.